going on with all that. Oh, now we're live. Uh, so we're talking about muscle loss. We're talking about fasting. The first question everybody should be asking is fasting for everybody? And I know that all the influencers and everybody online is saying everyone should fast. It's the best, and you just shouldn't eat, and you should fast. I don't necessarily agree with that. So in order to kind of figure this out, what you have to understand is, and this gets way past the whole like this conversation is way past the calories. So if you still think the body runs on calories, and you still think that's the way that this might be way more deeper than you will want to go. But the thing about fasting is that you have to understand the different somatotypes. So for instance, hard ectomorphs should never fast. They're going to have a really hard time with it. Their bodies run primarily on sugar, and it's going to eat away their muscle tissue really quickly. The mesos, you're going to get some muscle loss depending on where you are on the scale. Obviously, the closer to ecto you are, the more muscle you're going to lose. And then, when you get over mostly meso, even still slightly ecto, you can start fasting. And guys who are in the endomorph side, like where I'm at, fasting's got to be a part of your daily function. Like it's just one of those things that you're really going to want to do. The issue we run into is how the body utilizes fat versus sugar for fuel for creation of ATP. You also have to factor in daily function, what you're doing, that type of thing. When we look at some pro bodybuilders and stuff, when they cut their intake down, they do lose a bunch of weight, but a lot of what they're losing is muscle tissue. And it's not necessarily, the big thing is that how much your body's still running on sugar. And to be fair, a lot of times what the bodybuilders are doing is using a calorie-based system with the assumption that sugar, protein, and fiber are all equal in how the body functions, which is hilarious. If you think that you're again the calorie system that teaches that sugar, fiber, and protein are all equal in how the body functions is anyway. The problem we get into is that when you bring in a little bit of sugar, your body stays in sugar burning functions, sugar utilization function. And what ends up happening is that the ATP that's created from the sugar, your body recognizes as a needed function, not only for the blood, but for the brain and for everything. And so what ends up happening is your body rips apart a ton of muscle tissue to produce the sugar to keep everything running. And that's really where the problem lies. If you're going to do a fasting schedule, the most important thing is that you make sure that you walk yourself into a ketotic function to begin with, or a fat burning state to begin with. You don't have to be in ketosis. That would be the most important thing before you go into a fast, especially for any mesos. Endos, you guys are going to slide into it pretty quick. It's just going to be miserable if you don't walk yourself into a fat function first. So we see a lot of people who are trying to do the fasting thing, and they're miserable, and they've got headaches, and they don't feel good, and they have no energy, and they just feel horrible. Usually those people are the ones who are thin to begin with, or gaunt even to begin with. I don't know why some of these people tried it outside of all the, it's super healthy for you. Not usually the best. The worst thing in the world is that when we start looking at muscle to fat function, and we start looking at the different chemicals and things in it, like when women start doing this is a really, really big deal. I hate to be the guy who pushes against this whole trans and woke stuff, but women and men are not equal in any way. Like their bodies are so radically different. The hormonal function is so totally different. You can't be like, well, the guys are doing it, so the women should be able to do it. That is 100% not a thing. You have to take into account menstrual function. You got to take into account all the hormonal swings. You got to take into account that a woman's body will require and retain a specific amount of fat to maintain fertility, maintain the ability to produce a child. And so we're going to see a higher amount of muscle loss in women than we do in men for a number of different reasons. One, they have less testosterone, so the body is hormone that tells you to heal, regenerate, repair is lower. Their muscle mass to begin with is lower. And typically their body's ability to create, retain, and build muscle is lower than in men. So you guys need to look at, I get the like, oh, the autophagy is so important. Yeah, okay. You've got to look at the body holistically. You got to look at everything that's going on. I've seen a lot of women who were damaged significantly by trying to run fasting schedules that their husbands were running, and their husbands were doing just fine. But again, women, how many times have we heard, my husband cuts back on his snacks and he loses all this weight just fine, and then she does all this work and doesn't come off very easily. You guys are built different. That's why. So fasting is going to be something that you guys need to really kind of focus on. Now, if you're an endomorph, if you're one of those women who watches what she eats and doesn't eat that bad and still fat, fasting might be a great thing for you. I would recommend that you maintain hormonal function and you check and you hold those levels where they're supposed to be, as I would with everybody. But it would be something that I would highly recommend that you get with somebody who understands where you need to be. This is one of those times, especially if you're in that 18 to 35, 40 range, you're going to want to maintain progesterone function. And I would not do that with the drugs. I would do that with either, with probably oils would be my best bet. Like Progestins Plus would be the first one off the top of my head. But you're going to want to maintain that. The other thing that I see that people are messed up with all the time, and this is, you want to start a firestorm in the fasting community. A lot of people can believe that if you put anything in your mouth besides water or coffee or tea, that you're not really fasting. And that's fine. I can see that. The problem that we get into is that your body doesn't store everything you need to function. Like, you go a couple days without taking D3, your D3 levels are going to be too low, and I don't care how much you're in the sun. Methylated B vitamin functions for a whole lot of you are radically critical to your body function. If you have MTFHR, if you have COMT, if you've got some of the APOE, like these are easy, obvious things. Your body doesn't make and maintain and hold methylated B vitamins properly, and they're critical to nervous function, emotional, psychological function, all the metabolic function in your body that you're trying to promote through autophagy. Like, you don't have the chemicals to do those things. So you're going to have to take them. You're going to take the B vitamins. You're going to take the D3. You're probably going to take the CoQ10. If you're really wanting to promote, fat utilization for fuel, which is one of the big reasons people fast, you have to make sure that you have the function to do that. And if you don't, you're going to have to increase methylated B6. You're going to have to increase, bile salts and digestive enzymes and all those other things, because you're still having to make ATP. And one of the things that you've got to do at multiple times is liberate those fatty acids from your liver. And so digestive enzymes and bile are going to be important. So, those are some of the things that you want to focus on. Some of you guys don't produce NAD very well. And, sometimes NMN is the right path. Sometimes just straight NAD is the right path. But that's where a lot of this stuff comes in. If you're going to be fasting, especially for weight loss, you need somebody to walk in and go through your somatotype with you first. So, are you an ectomorph? Are you meso? Are you endo? It doesn't take very long to figure that out. Once you figure that out, you can kind of start narrowing down where on that scale you are, and then you can kind of start factoring in fasting. I get this question all the time. And, it's one of those things that whenever you see an influencer, whenever you see a doctor, whenever you read a report, and it somehow gives you the impression that all people are the same, that a diet or an exercise or, a thing like fasting or a supplement is what everybody needs. And if everybody just took this thing, everybody would get better. I need you to understand immediately that that's trash. Now, maybe they're talking about a subset of people that they forgot to classify. So for instance, if you're like, hey, for maintenance and blood in your body and the whole deal. Yeah, for endomorphs. Wouldn't recommend it for ectomorphs. It'd be questionable for mesos. You could probably do it for mesos. Mesos and endos, you could probably do it. But it's not a thing everybody can do. There is no blanket thing that everyone can do besides drink more water. And still, for some people, that's a bad idea. So, when we start looking at fasting, understand that this is a major metabolic function. This is something that's really, really, really big in metabolic function. And you have to understand what's going on in the body, any genetic issues that person has, what their activity level is, and how their body processes fuel. So if you don't factor those things in, fasting is probably not going to be something that you need to be recommending to people. Now, eating less and fasting are not the same thing. So telling people you should cut back on your portions is not a problem. Like, you can usually tell people that. Now, the problem we get into with that is that depending on the macro set that they're consuming, and again, their somatotype, it might not be the best set for them to begin with. So, regulating these things, you've got, this is why I get so pissy about, the calories thing, is because you have to understand the individual macros are all tied to hormonal function. And if you don't recognize the body runs on hormones, not calories, and the body is told what to do with everything in it via hormones, you're missing the entirety of how to work with somebody in a health manner and get them where they want to go. So, if you're unfamiliar with the term somatotyping, I would look it up. That would be one of those big things to try to do. The other thing that I would try to do is figure out, go through and actually look at the macros. Now, you've got to have to break these all down. And we can do this on a different video, but, the idea that carbohydrates, you're like, carbohydrates make you fat. No, they don't. Sugar makes you fat. Fiber never gets absorbed in the body to begin with. So, that's the other thing. What goes in your mouth doesn't go in your body. It has to be absorbed through the intestines. Fiber, by definition, never gets absorbed, ever. So it cannot play a role in doing anything. It blocks absorption of other things. And so it's more of a tool than it is a macronutrient. However, in the calorie system, this thing that literally by definition never gets in your body, they say has just the same amount of effect of getting you fat, gaining muscle, and everything else as protein and sugar does. So again, if you're using the calorie system, you're already lost. If you're using a calorie system, if you're using a macro system and then converting it to calories, I mean, fine, but you're using a macro system. You're not using a calorie system. But so that's the big thing on fasting, is that, a lot of people are hurting themselves. And a lot of people are using weight as their metric for fasting. Don't ever use weight as your metric for health. Because if you lose weight, what did you lose? Did you lose inflammatory weight? Did you lose water weight? Did you lose fat? Did you lose muscle? Did you lose bone density? Did you lose organ tissue? What did you lose? It's critical to figure out what you lost, because if you lose muscle, which a lot of people do during fasting, that's your metabolic engine. You want to talk about losing fat later. You want to talk about having energy later. You want to talk about anything functional that everybody complains about, soreness, fatigue, brain fog, getting fat, not having energy, sleep, all of that lives in your muscle tissue. So if you lose 5 pounds of muscle tissue with your 5 pounds of fat, unless you had a lot more muscle tissue backing it up, you just did something really bad for your body long term. So keep that in mind. If you're going to go through fasting, make sure that you've done your research and you know what you're doing. Make sure you first identify and recognize what your somatotype is. And again, the biggest thing is, remember, there isn't a diet for people. There is a diet for a person. And so just because your best friend or Susan or your favorite influencer is running something doesn't mean it's for you. The way I do my stuff is not, I'd say 90% of the people on the planet, probably maybe 80%, probably shouldn't be doing what I do. Hardcore endomorphs, vast majority of people, because the way I run my system isn't the best way to run everybody else's system. It's the best for me. That doesn't mean it's good for you. It can be very bad for you. So if you guys aren't working with somebody who understands metabolic biochemistry and understands that everything kind of starts in the gut, everything, mental health, physical, gaining muscle tissue, losing fat, all starts in the gut. You've got to clean up the inflammation. You got to clean up because the inflammation is broken chemistry. The chemistry is not running the way it's supposed to. So you got to clean all that stuff out, feed the liver, feed the kidneys, detox those, put everything back together so your body can create the enzymes and create the neurotransmitters and create all the raw materials it requires to run everything. Once the gut's fixed and your hormones are kind of reset where they're supposed to be, then you can start addressing, how you're doing everything else. So, because I would tell you, if your gut's really messed up, you probably shouldn't be exercising that hard to begin with. So, but anyway, so start with that, kind of take that in. And if you guys have any questions about fasting or how your body's going to run, give us a call or hit us up, pillarsofwellness.com, and we'll help you out. Have a fabulous, wonderful day. Thanks for your time.